Welcome back for another episode of A Woman's Strength, empowering stories from struggles to triumph. This podcast is to provide women a platform to share their stories of struggles, how they got through it, and how they ended up victorious. Ladies, sharing our stories gives women courage to keep going and a hope to know that others have done it and she can too. And it also reminds the woman telling her story, wow, look at how far I've come. I've overcome the pain, and God has blessed me and walked with me. So it's twofold. This is why it's so important to share your story. I'm Rosita Perez. I am your host, self discovery coach, and realtor. I get to help people find their way home, whether home is a physical home in buying or selling real estate, or if home is connecting with the core of who you are meant to be. Today, my guest is Karrie Ingalsbe. She is a color analysis specialist and a certified Christian image consultant, as well as a Rodan Fields rep. Let me get Karrie on the stage here. There she is. Hey, Karrie.
Hey, good morning, Rosita. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this podcast this morning.
Okay, so I am interested in the certified Christian image consultant. I'm not familiar with that, so this is something new for me. We can discuss that at the end. But
Perfect.
today, Karrie, I just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for sharing your story. And I know how vulnerable that can be sometimes. So, welcome. I'm just glad you're here. Karrie, are you ready to dive into it today?
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully, this message will resonate with a lot of women.
I'm excited too. So, can you share with us a time when you faced a significant struggle in your life and just a little bit about the circumstances?
Yes, you bet. Well, in 2010, I was teaching at a university. I was serving in an international women's Bible study. My husband and I had 3 growing kids. We were very active, had a lot of things going on, a lot of what they call irons in the fire, a lot of busyness, and everything seemed to be going really smoothly. What happened during Thanksgiving week of 2010, my husband and I were sitting in the surgeon's office that morning, and she said, "Your biopsy results came back positive. You have breast cancer." And that just kind of was totally was life changing. And so, with that thought, it just seemed like those next few weeks were such a blur. I remember going into the hospital for a lot of outpatient procedures, a lot of lymph node assessments and tests. And because there was no lymph node involvement, my husband and I talked through it, and we really decided that we wanted to try the lumpectomy option first. And so the surgeon suggested that I do chemotherapy and try to shrink the tumor so that when they did the lumpectomy, hopefully it would just be a small section that they would have to remove. And so I went through the beginning process of getting chemo. With that, who would have thought you could be allergic to chemotherapy meds? But I was. So with that process, the second time that I tried this particular chemotherapy med, they loaded me up with steroids and all of that. Still couldn't take it. So they ended up switching everything. And by the time I think it was like 3 months later, finally, when I finished my chemo, then they started the lumpectomy process. So it was quite an adventure, I would say, to have gone through. I went through 3 lumpectomy attempts. still didn't get clean margins. And so the surgeon and my oncologist both said, you've got to go through a mastectomy. There's no other option. So I ended up going through that mastectomy, and just the struggle with knowing that, okay, I know these are temporary bodies, but just the whole body image issue and the mental and physical view of myself just began to change. And I really struggled with, how do I see myself? How will my husband see me through that process? And it was interesting because as women, we all struggle with some type of body image concern. It could be our weight. It could be we're too tall, or we think we're too short, or we think when we gain weight, maybe it all goes to our hips or whatever it is. But this one just really kind of hit me to the core. And that's when I was so thankful that in June of 2010, I had gone through the Christian image consultant training. And that really prepared me for thinking, I've got the tools that I need to be able to feel confident, to dress myself with confidence and not be self-conscious about at least how I look on the outside to other people. So it was such an important piece of how I dealt with it because, again, my image consulting focus was all on God's truth, his love for us, his deep focus on who we are is perfect in his eyes, and that he knew from the moment I was conceived that I was going to be going through this. And so I was really grateful for that reminder, kind of focus on that.
So first, I want to thank you for being vulnerable to share that. And I also want to thank you for just being an example, being an overcomer, just continuing on. I'm so glad that you're still here with us.
Me too.
Yeah. I love a lot of the points that you said. You talked about self-doubt going through it. You talked about your identity because our breasts are a big identity. It's kind of inbred in us.
Definitely.
So this is what makes you a woman. And I mean, yes, I get it for having kids and things like that, but it doesn't define who we are. And I'm so glad that you pointed that out. So I'm so glad that you got in contact and connected with the Christian Image Consulting. And I want to go back to that season where you were going through it, right? You just found out. And you talked about one of the internal battles that you dealt with was self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So what one action did you take to get you out of the rabbit hole? I'm going to call it, right? Because when we get to tough times happen to us, we kind of like circle the rabbit hole going, I don't want to go down there. It's not a good place. But you tip our toe in there going, I really don't want to go. So tell me what one action item kept you out of that rabbit hole?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, I was in a leadership position in an international women's Bible study for years. And through that process, I had prayed with and encouraged and just helped to serve women who had also gone through devastating struggles and maybe health diagnoses, et cetera. And I really kind of pondered, Lord, am I going to be strong enough to do this and to do this with grace? And what I found was the women that I had encouraged, that I had served with, that I had gotten so close to because of our prayers for one another. Those were the women who rallied around me. And so I often think of what specific action or strategy did I take? It was prayer and claiming God's promises, looking at and remembering that God doesn't make mistakes. He made my body the way He made it. He knew what was going to happen. And for some reason, I needed to go through this, whether that was for my own spiritual growth, whether that was so that I could help others after I went through this. Just really the power of prayers that I did myself, that my family did for me, and that others did for me was crucial. If I didn't have my faith in Christ, I don't know how people go through life without that strong faith.
I love how you say that because I don't know how either. I think back often to BC, before Christ days,
Mhm.
and how I didn't get through it.
Yeah.
Lots of chaos, lots of going down the wrong path or of the
Mhm.
drinking or drugging or unhealthy relationship. Just, it wasn't good. And you cannot sustain that for very long. You just
True.
can't. So I can attest to the difference of doing it this way and now doing it this way. And it's the
Yes.
joy of being able to be connected with God and who I am and who I was made to be versus wearing the various masks to fit in
Yeah.
and be accepted. I can simply be me and authentically me. And it's a joy. It keeps a smile on my face, but it's not a mask smile. It's
Yes.
a smile that comes from deep within. That
Exactly.
joy. You know how they say the joy of the Lord is your strength?
Mhm.
Oh, that I so resonate with that because many times, just because we're Christians doesn't mean that life does not happen to us. It happens to us.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And how you are such an example of how you took the first step. And sometimes, let me back up. So you took the first step of you were already in leadership position. You were
Mhm.
already in community.
Yeah.
But you took the first step of being vulnerable and sharing that with your group. You didn't have to,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Many of us want to keep it just to ourselves because we don't want people to feel sorry for us or anything like that. But this is when we need our community
Yeah.
of women that will pray for us, that will love on us.
Mhm.
So that, I think, to me, from hearing your story, your step that you took, your action step is to be vulnerable with those that you can trust.
What I often think is, as women, we don't ever want to ask for help. We want to try to do everything on our own, and it's really hard for us to allow others to serve us. And what I found was that my group of women, my tribe, wanted to serve. And I always remember a friend saying, if you don't let them serve you, you're really taking the blessing away from them because they want to do this for you. And you're taking that blessing away from them in the long run. And I thought, oh my goodness, yes, because I know when I have brought a meal to a friend and I know that they're going through really a busy, hectic time with kids' activities, and they just didn't have time to make a meal, and they've got to rush from one place to the next. And I brought over a meal. Just the thankfulness and even just the joy inside my heart, knowing, Lord, you reminded me that I needed to do something special for this family this week. And so I did. And so thank you for letting me do something special for them. That's the joy that others feel when we're in need and they do something for us, whether it's a gift card for food or maybe a homemade meal that they bring over. And I think that we need to not always think we can do everything on our own. We need to be there for each other.
We are meant to be in community. We are not meant to do life alone.
Yeah.
When we get that, when that clicks in us, and we have reciprocal relationships with women that are trustworthy, are encouraging, and we do that for each other, that just builds the community as a whole.
Yes.
So we are switching from being a lone ranger, I'm going to call it, right? Being this Wonder Woman that we think we are, doing everything on our own. We can't. And when you get in community, everybody finds their superpowers. Everybody elevates because the community is working together and loving on each other.
Definitely.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Karrie,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about several women that are watching right now,
Mm-hmm.
and they relate to your story.
Yeah.
They're beginning the journey. They just found out that they may
Mm.
have cancer.
Yeah.
What would you say to this woman or these women?
I definitely would say don't go through this alone. You have to rely on those close friends who love you unconditionally, those friends who have hopefully share that same faith as you do, those women who are not going to leave you when times get tough. I always remember a friend that said to me, stay away from friends who are toxic. Stay away from friends who only want to talk about themselves and never want to ask you about yourself. Don't forget to really be there for them as well. But every woman's journey, especially with cancer, is unique and different. Nobody's journey is just like somebody else's. And we all have to make those decisions based on where we feel like the Lord is guiding us. And I just always want to be there for women who are struggling with that cancer diagnosis because maybe they don't have a friend who has gone through this before. And cancer centers are typically an extremely good, amazing place to be able to connect with other women in a support group as well. Sometimes, again, we don't want to go to a support group at a cancer center because we're thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be so depressing. But more than likely, you're going to find someone there, a comrade who can be there to encourage you, to support you. And it's going to be a good thing to be able to connect with at least one or two other women who have gone through this because they know exactly what you're thinking. They have been there, whether it's through chemo or through multiple surgeries or through radiation, whatever it is, they've got that same connection. And so just to not do it alone.
I love that. So, Karrie, we talked about your story of finding out you had cancer, how you overcame with community, prayer, and your trust in God, and being vulnerable. That was the first step. We talked about how you've overcome. And so I want to find out now, where are you now? What is your victory story?
Yes, I would definitely say that my victory story is focused on just being available to other women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. It is really such a strong community of support. So I'm always available when I hear from women who say, oh my goodness, I just got diagnosed. I will speak to women one-on-one who have just been recently diagnosed with cancer and just encourage them to develop that friendship group, people who can pray for them at 2 o'clock in the morning after they have gone through chemo the day before and now the nausea and vomiting has kicked in. They need to start a prayer chain. They need that group of friends who will be lifting them up 24/7 when the need arises. But also with my image consultant business, and the color analysis specialist role, it has been really a joy to speak to women's groups. And in, say, maybe in a church gathering, when I've spoken to a women's ministry group, or in a small home setting, when I've worked with a small group of women, there's almost always between 1 and 5 women who have gone through breast cancer and are like, I don't know how to dress my body anymore. Everything has shifted after I've gone through all of this, or I've gained weight, or I've done this. And so the beauty of being able to help and encourage women to regain that sense of self-confidence, regain that sense of a positive body image. Really, it's to transform the way they see themselves and to help them to see themselves as God sees them, beautiful and perfect as they are, and to feel confident in how they present themselves to the world. So that is really the goal. And it's not about, just looking good on the outside or beauty on the outside. It's that transformation on the inside that just can't help but bubble out to the outside. That's the key.
I really love that because we have been bogged down for generations about how we look.
Mm-hmm.
It so has defined us to the point where we have lost who we are.
Yes.
And appreciated ourselves. The comparison trap is ridiculous, and it's been that way for generations. So I'm so glad that you have a way out, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just about dealing with what we look like now, right? It's and what we look like after cancer or after kind of trauma. It's about then also healing from the past wounds of what we didn't measure up. Maybe we didn't feel like we measured up in how we looked as a teenager, as a young adult. So you're not just healing that today. What you're doing goes back, even maybe generationally, right? Because we've been told things.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
the way the family does it. And it's deeper than that. So I'm so glad that you are doing this work.
Well, and it is interesting how the Lord always uses every circumstance in your life to really kind of hone who you are in Christ. So I look at, like you said, when I was a child, I grew taller than all of my peers when I was in 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And so I was called names because I was taller than everybody else. I was very thin. And so again, I was teased. I wore glasses. I was called names and teased. My teeth were crooked, just all of those things. As I look at who I am now and the health and the body image struggles and what I do to serve women, to help them to see that they are beautiful, no matter what shape, what size, it doesn't matter. They are beautiful. And how can I help them build that sense of self-confidence on the inside that bubbles out? Definitely.
I love that. We are at the end of our time together. So I want to thank you for sharing all that. I'm really excited about the work that God has chosen you to do. I'm really excited about that. And so I know we'll keep in contact because I want to see it unfold as the story happens, right?
Sounds good.
So, Karrie, how can people reach you?
Yes, they are welcome to go to my website, which is my name, karrieingalsbe.com, or they can email me at karrieingalsbe@gmail.com. You can email me for a fun, free fashion sheet. I'd love to have you just reach out. Thanks.
And I will have that in the comments so that you will be able to connect with her. Before we close, I just want to invite you to visit my website at movingforwardforlife.com. Schedule your complimentary 30-minute clarity call. This is a space all for you, all about you. You can just leave your roles behind of wife, mom, grandma, teacher, everything else, and just be a woman. Just be yourself. 30 minutes to talk about you, where you want to go, what you want to do, what are your dreams. 30 minutes, all about you. And this is a safe place to speak your piece with no judgment. So I'll put the link below. Karrie and I want to share with you that you are not alone. You're not alone. We are not meant to be or do life alone.
Yeah.
And you have the power to choose the trajectory of your life. You have the choice. So today, think about which path you want to go and what choice you want to make. And I hope that you choose you, because you are a masterpiece. God has made you uniquely fashioned, and there's no one else like you. We will see you next time. Karrie, thank you so much for joining us. Great information. I love it. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. It was such a great time. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.